Architects Working from Home, a how-to guide presented by Anneke Schrick. I'm a professional registered architect with SACAP, and I've compiled a CPD to share my experience with you. I've been working from home for the past 4 years, and I literally evaluate how I work every day. So I've compiled tips and techniques to make it simpler for you to get used to this process, and I really hope it can help you. How this presentation is structured is there's firstly the introduction, which we've done. Then I'm going to take you through the standard architectural service. What can we do from home and what can't we work on? So let's see where that split lies. Then, what am I? Am I a maker or am I a manager? This is something that's based on an essay by Paul Graham. I'll take you through that. We're going to discuss our modern workforce, millennials. What opportunities are there in working with millennials? And then we're going into the practical part of this presentation, where I give you techniques and tips that you can implement today to make this transition process simpler. It's important for you to understand the standard architectural service, your strong and weak points in terms of whether you are a creative mind or an administrative mind, and then your modern workforce, how the people around you think and can be utilized when we talk about what practical tips you can implement today. Then we're going to look at what the architectural team of the future looks like. How do we go beyond COVID-19? And then the way forward. I'm challenging everyone to question the parameters of what we used to think the architectural practice should look like or should have looked like. I think we are at a point where this can definitely be questioned. Okay, so let's take a look at the standard architectural service. I've taken the liberty of adding stage 0 and stage 6+. These are concepts I borrow from Ian Alexander. He often refers to the project being far longer than what is defined as stage 1 to 6 of the standard service. And I'm sure we are all very aware that we are involved way before stage 1 and way after stage 6 on projects. And I encourage you to charge for the time you spend on stage 0 and stage 6+. But that is a separate matter. If you look at stage 1 to 6, and you look at the definitions of what that entails, I am of the opinion that there is a lot, the vast majority of the work can continue from home. It is only right at the beginning where you can't go to council to obtain the necessary documentation and can't go to the site, and then where you can't get plan approval as part of stage 4, and then on stage 5, that is on construction. That's the only parts of the standard service that we can't do from home, or that will stop these processes in this time of lockdown. Stage 1, there are many clients that has a lot more time now. They actually start thinking about their new projects now. So I encourage you to stay in their heads. Continue to advertise to them. Continue to encourage them to activate that project they discussed with you over coffee when they ran into you at church. Just create your own work in this time. Obviously, if you've had a project which is past stage 1 and now it's stage 2 and 3, this is gold. I mean, you sit at home without interruption, or you have complete control over your interruptions because you can just switch off all your electronic equipment and continue with the work you want to do, and then open your electronic equipment when you want to spend time on it. I really encourage you to do that as well. That is an important part of working from home, to take control over where the difference lies between when am I working and when am I at home. that's a separate matter. Let's go back to stage 2 and 3. 2 and 3 you can easily do from home. In fact, that's the best place to do it from. Stage 4 we can do to a very large extent. Many contractors would be very happy to price on new projects in this quiet time. They also at home. They also need work. When this lockdown ends, they have to hit the ground running. This means we have to do most of the procurement. Well, we have to go out on tender during this lockdown phase. There's no reason for us not to do it. Obviously, if it's going to be extended, we have ways to administer that as well. Stage 5, we can't do. We all know that. I see JBCC has issued a notice on how to deal with COVID-19 and stage 5. I encourage you to read through that as well. It's really important how we administer this. This is where our ability to be proper site architects are actually tested. And then stage 6, most of stage 6 we can't really do from home, but it often happens that we neglect stage 6 and we don't give the clients all the documentation that was required because we regard it as admin and we just neglect it. I encourage you, go back to the projects where you didn't do your closeout properly and send the necessary documentation to your clients. It's a good follow through. It's a good opportunity for you to make a good impression on your old clients. On this slide, I'm showing it to you visually, what it looks like. How big part can be done now and how big part cannot be done now. I know stage 5 is 27%, which is a rather large portion of the construction process, but the proof is in the pudding. You can see we still have a lot of work. Paul Graham wrote an essay in 2009 where he refers to 2 different types of schedules, and this is really relevant for architects. You have some architects who have makers' schedules, and you have some architects who have managers' schedules. Your makers are typically your creative minds, and then the managers are your typical project architects. A maker divides his day into 3 chunks of time. It's a morning session, an afternoon session, and an evening session. Whereas a manager, his day looks like a normal diary. It's split into hours. You can easily set up a meeting with them. It's not an upsetting thing. Whereas with a maker, if one sets up a meeting with them, that breaks an entire session for them. Also, anticipating to go to a meeting is something they find disruptive. Paul Graham tells in the essay he wrote, let's move on and see how this should be interpreted in terms of architecture and the standard architectural service. Before we start, please write down the names of the most prominent maker and manager in your team, or who you've worked with before. This is important because in the future, when you think about these individuals, I need you to remember the point I'm trying to make now. Let's go through it. During inception, we have a big job for a manager, and the job of the maker is a smaller job. They need to understand the nuances of the brief, but obtaining all the necessary documentation that is associated with inception, the scope definition, minuting the client's requirements, going through the budget, all of that. That's much more manager's responsibility. During concept and viability, the maker is far more involved. The manager's role is slightly smaller. And then during stage 3, this is where the designer does the bulk of the work. This is also the stage which we get prizes for. This is what most people think architecture is all about this design time. This is what is published in magazines. The manager now has a far smaller job. Then we go into stage 4. Here, the maker and the manager needs to interact very well. It's important that they have a great relationship, that they understand each other and honor each other's requirements in this time in order to get to a project that is actually successful. And then when you are on site, the maker has a far smaller role to play. The manager is the guy that needs to follow up everything, make sure everything is coordinated, follow up with the consultants, chair the meetings, minute the meetings, and make sure that time and cost and quality is managed effectively. So, what I need to ask you is, which one are you? Are you a maker or are you a manager? There are the rare occasions where one can be both. But most often, in order for you to get the best out of this presentation, I really suggest that you grab a pen of paper now and spend the necessary time on this slide, answering these questions to the best of your ability. I often redo this questionnaire. It changes literally for every project that I do. Sometimes I even change it during the course of the project. Am I a maker or a manager? I'm a very clear manager. My day looks like a normal diary. I see people often. I have regular meetings. I very rarely sit for big chunks of time to complete a creative piece of work. It's difficult to be an architect who doesn't do design, but I've managed to work around it, and that's what I'm trying to communicate to you. I execute projects really well. So when we think back on what the standard architectural service is, and we've discovered that I can't really do my work now because I'm a project architect, that's why I go back to understand exactly what I can do in order to earn a living during this time of lockdown. But because I understand exactly where my strong points are in terms of being a maker or a manager, I can plan this actually far better. Question number 2. Who in my team can be identified to do the duties I shouldn't be doing? I'm going to give you examples of things I shouldn't be doing. I was briefed on a new coffee shop that was required by a client at the end of last year. I submitted that design 2 weeks ago. I completely outsourced the design work. So let's start at the beginning. I went to the briefing, I compiled the scope, and then I brief an architect friend or a colleague who has won prizes for coffee shop designs. She has the experience. She knows the nitty-gritty about designing coffee shops. I have absolutely no experience with that. Why would I break my head about it? I pay her a high rate per hour to do the design part. As I've shown you earlier, the design part is only a small part of the entire project. I then take the rest of the project further. I do all the communication, I do the tender part of it, the approval processes, all of it. I just needed her to do the design because that is something I'm not good at. Another thing I shouldn't be compiling is a detailed spec document. I would literally write a short version of something that the contractor should then try to figure out. But because I outsource that work, it's a far higher quality document. It comes into my inbox, I check it, I give it back to the person who compiled it with all my comments and notes on it, ask them to add content to it. But when I have to sit and compile it, I'm bad at it and I get interrupted. That's why I outsource that as well. Similar to that is working drawings or construction details. There are people in our midst that are fantastic contract document compilers. They understand these drawing programs so well. They can really do magic with it. Why would I waste my time on it? I'm bad at it. It takes a long time. I make mistakes with it. So even that, I know I have to give to someone who falls within the maker category. This is a bit more complex because I work alone, so I literally brief people via email, via the telephone. I sometimes set up meetings with them to brief them properly. It does happen that I have to take them to site. Well, usually if I outsource a design, I take the designer to site. But most of our work happens via email. In an office typology, this is far easier. It's much easier to give the maker work to the makers and the manager work to the managers. Then the third question, whose duties should I take over because they suck at it? We've all seen this. When a design architect goes and chairs a big site meeting, the structure of the meeting is poor, the way they communicate with the consultants is poor, their relationship with the contractor is in a bad state. They are often, designers think contractors don't know what they're doing. That creates a terrible scenario. A poor relationship between the designer and the guys on site that actually need to execute it. The minutes are often very poor, especially if they do it themselves. I've seen it recently where a design architect literally paralyzes a project due to the needs for perfection. There's no proper interaction between the contractor and this design architect. There's no give and throw, where project architects are far better at managing those things. So keep the designers off-site for the management part of it. Obviously, they have to go to check the quality. There is a space for them on site, but don't make designers do the full execution of the construction process. Oh, they often also suck with the implementation of the JBCC. They don't understand the implications. They issue instructions that's not documented well. It really causes the delays. It causes projects to complete late and out of budget. Let's move on to question number 4. List the actual projects where these changes are needed today. I'm going to give you a couple of examples of my projects where one would typically make changes. And then I encourage you to press pause so you can write it down on your own projects to see where the change is needed. For me, I was briefed to redo a clubhouse. It sounds like a simple thing, but that project needed me to walk away from the specification of the furniture. There are people that are better than me with that specific job, and that's why I give it to someone else to do. Doing emergency escape routes like for a hotel, that is something I outsource in its entirety. Nothing of that is something I should be doing. Someone else goes and does the inspections, they do the drawings, they send me the drawings. I do the interaction with the client to get their health and safety department to approve it in a format that they require it. I then do the coordination with the signage installers and the guys that need to print it. I do the administrative part of it. I also obviously check it because I take responsibility for it, and I go do the inspections myself. I can't just outsource all of that. But as you can see, it's a partial outsourcing of the work, not a full outsource of the work. When I do master planning of a precinct, that I do everything, every part of that I do myself. It's important to go do the audits of all the spaces and understand the parts you can't see on drawings. It's important to do all the documentation of that yourself and to do the presentations yourself and the interaction with the client. Well, in this project, that is what is relevant for me. Obviously, there's some of the presentation work and drawing work I outsource. That's really small. But the bulk of the work there, I do myself. Again, it's important here. I have to set up meetings with the different role players, attend the meetings, minute the meetings, take proper record. This is the job of a manager. It's not a designer's job. I will sit with a proper designer at the end once I understand what needs to happen in order for them to make it pretty. But for me to give them the information they need to to design it well. That is the clean-cut manager's job. So please press pause, write down which of your projects need to be split into functions that must be executed by a maker and functions that must be executed by a manager. If we move on to question number 5, write down the 3 things you can do today to address these issues. I'm going to give you examples. It's just a principle where you don't ignore this issue because it's too big. Where you say, but what are the 3 things I can do today? Even if it's just do a bit of research on something or phone someone to discuss it. Just get the ball rolling on implementing this change. A couple of examples you can do is you can compile an email to your team proposing this change, proposing how you want the work to be split up, whether you're a boss or an employee. That is an email, you just put it out there. The worst that can happen is you're going to be in the same situation you are in at the moment. The worst that can happen is they say no. If you plan on having this conversation at your next team meeting, write down every little detail of what you would like to discuss to pitch this idea to your team. Or something else you can do today is take the first project that you've identified in question 4 and list the actual details of the work that can be split. Just make a quick list. That makes it far simpler for you to digest and to communicate to someone else. And then something you can start thinking about is scheduling sensible times into your diaries to meet up with the team again to do the collaboration that is required when these jobs are split. So for me, it is I check in with the people who work for me every second day, see how far they are. We normally agree how long something will take them. They say, yes, this is where we are. No, sorry, my dog died. Honestly, that doesn't affect me at all. I just move my program out then. I don't pay for lost time. And if someone starts not performing the way we agreed on a regular basis, I literally stop briefing them and brief someone else. Let's have a look at architectural practices as we know them. We have permanent employees. We pay them whether they perform or not. So if they lose a day because their dog died, we pay them. You pay them whether you have work for them or not. In this time of lockdown, you'll start feeling the pinch now, but it's only more emphasized now. This has been happening in your office since forever. We pay for permanent office space. We create one working environment for everyone, as if everyone needs exactly the same working environment. We always pay for workstations, recreational areas, bathrooms, boardrooms, if you can imagine how often a boardroom is used, and actually, more importantly, not used. But we pay for it as if it is occupied 24 hours a day. Then, we make makers and managers share the same space. And we understand now that that is completely counterproductive. The cost of doing that is something we can't quantify, but one must understand that there is a cost to it. And then most architectural practices have one service. It's the standard service, which we all get paid the same amount of money for. Millennials, the workforce we are currently dealing with. Many older people disregard this generation. But let's have a look at what the opportunities are. Flexi time. I know many of you think this is a complete swear word. When I started working on flexi time, I realized that I can't charge my boss for the 40 minutes I've been sitting chatting with my colleagues. If I hear my friends if I listen to my friends and I hear the detail at which they know their colleagues, I know that they get to know their colleagues around the coffee pot in the office, and that happens on someone's account. If your employees work on flexi time, they can only bill you for the time they spend on the work. Flexi time is a wonderful thing. You get a higher standard of work if you employ someone on this type of ad hoc basis. Otherwise, you just go and get it elsewhere. This is a very established system. You get used to the people you employ and a high quality of work. And if someone just doesn't produce, you just replace them. That's the third point. Everyone's replaceable. Because you employ these millennials on a short-term basis, project for project, or for me, it's not even for an entire project. I literally just give them tasks, ask them how much it's going to cost, ask them when they'll deliver it, and then get the work back from them. Again, if they don't produce, I just give it to someone else. I had one architect redo the work of another architect because he couldn't give it to me in a file that I required up front. I blame myself for it because I didn't make it clear to him that if he doesn't give it to me in the file, there was no room for negotiation, then I have to double pay. That is school fees I am willing to pay. Then everything is negotiable. Nothing is fixed. It's not every month you earn the same salary. No one works the same amount every month. But because we negotiate these rates, everyone wins. I must say, I pay a far higher rate per hour than people who work in offices, but I get a higher quality thing at a time that I negotiated with them. The great thing about millennials is we are incredibly entitled. We're looking for an opportunity to gain experience and to prove ourselves. During lockdown, you will see a very clear distinction between the people who hustle and the people who just sit and wait for their salaries. There are those that stimulate the economy in this time and that create opportunity, and there are those that think this is one big holiday. Many small businesses will have to close or retrench at the end of lockdown. You yourself can decide whether you're going to sit back and wait for your salary to be paid into your account, or if you're going to be part of the solution. When I negotiated flexi time for the first time, it's about 5 years ago now. Obviously, I was very nervous, just like anyone would be. I planned for this conversation. I thought, what happens if I get fired? I was really scared. My boss's initial reaction was no. Luckily, I was at such a desperate place in my life that I was willing to resign. I never even told him that. I luckily never had to. So what I pitched to him was, let's try it for 2 weeks. We tried it for 2 weeks. I worked my ass off. I had to make him feel that this is to his benefit, that I work flexi time. At the end of 2 weeks, he said to me, listen, it doesn't work for me that I never know when you're going to be in the office. Can we please have fixed times between 10 and 3 daily? And that really worked for us really well. What happened was I had to stop charging for coffee breaks. What later then happened is I had another baby. Initially it started because I had a baby, then I had another baby. But by that time, the hourly rate was in place and trust was in place. We understood our system. I communicated well what it is I'm working on and why I'm charging what I'm charging. What is really important when you work like this is that you manage the expectations of when you're going to deliver and then actually deliver on the time But I mean, that's just good work ethic. It's not architecture specific or anything. So eventually our relationship evolved into not having fixed time because I had the second baby. And then eventually I had a third baby. Where we are now is he's no longer my boss. We have a great mutual respect for each other. We are partners in 2 side businesses. But this is a relationship we had to manage right from the start. It's something we negotiate very often, where we stand with each other. Do we have a professional relationship? Yes or no? What does that relationship look like? People often say to me, "Oh, you're so lucky that you can work from home." I want to punch them in the face. It's not luck. It is dedicated hard work. It's disciplined time management. It's continuous self-evaluation and interrogation of my systems every day, and the willingness to make the changes required to make these things work. Just as an example, this recording is done over a weekend. I have 3 babies and we're in lockdown. To get time to work is something I have to negotiate with my partner, with my kids every day. It's a lifestyle that I've developed, and that creates opportunity for me to generate money in a time when our country needs money to be generated. So I can continue to make the payments I've been making. I can continue to give projects to these freelancers I've been giving work to. I'm not going to call it unemployment, but they can't sit back either. The quality of the work they need to provide to me now must be of the best standard. So I will continue to use them. If they're going to put themselves in the group of people that's going to sit back and think this is a holiday, then no, I can't use them. And it's simple for me. It's nice to know in the future that this is not the type of individual I would like to take it further with. So some practical experiments you can start implementing today. I'm so excited that everyone is forced into this now. It's a great opportunity. Isolate the makers and the managers. This has luckily already happened to you. But what you need to do now, so spatially it has happened, but take away the manager responsibilities from the makers. Take that workload off them, take the manager's design work and give it to the makers, split those projects, establish the good relationships between them. When you get back into the office, you'll see it works far better, but because we don't share spaces now, that's a great opportunity. Schedule the interaction times between the makers and the managers. Have a method in place for when they need to contact each other on a quick ad hoc basis. So in your diary you have fixed times for interaction. Why that is important and why it works well is a manager then groups the questions he has into a bundle. Then he can send it to the maker just before the meeting in order to prepare the maker that this is what he wants to discuss and what he needs him to have at the meeting. And then the maker isn't interrupted all the time by the manager. An important part of this process, and you'll see this happens with every practical tip I'm giving you, is get the feedback. Ask the questions. Were you more or less productive in the past 2 weeks if you do a 2-week trial? So 2 weeks from now, we would be rather far into the lockdown process and we can start the evaluation process in order to implement it after lockdown. Then the second question is, were you happier in the past week? That's also important, that you work with happy employees. Or even if you work on your own, just consider, does it make you happier to split these tasks? And what do you think can be done to improve our working environment? Get the feedback from the actual people on the floor. they often have great suggestions that will make their work environment far better for them. They will be more productive. So I'm going to call that test and evaluate. This is a process that should continue. It's a question you'll get used to at your weekly meetings. Is there something we can improve on? And often just run over it. But if one develops a lifestyle of trying to identify ways to better the conditions, the quality of your output is far higher generally. The second one I can suggest is experiment with flexi hours. Again, because we are forced to work in separate spaces at the moment, I'm sure in each office it's different. Ideally, one would want your employees to work from 8 to 5. That's what you pay them for. That's what you're supposed to do. You don't know why they don't do it. With my example, it's clear. It's because I have 3 babies. So I've scheduled it in. I'm going to work, I can't remember how many hours a week. I'm going to work, but it is between 6 and 12 on some days and between 12 and 6 on other days. We also work over weekends to catch up on the lost time. But for each employee, if you want them to have fixed time, just schedule those fixed time. 10 to 3 is a very sensible time for everyone to be in front of their desks. But because we have weird lifestyles now, we can allow a bit of flexi time and test it and see if we can control the employee's time in that way. Again, go get the feedback. Were you more or less productive in the past 2 weeks when we had these fixed times and flexi times? How can this benefit the company? I'm going to tell you another story. So when I negotiated flexi time for the first time, it worked like this. We had a site meeting on a Thursday afternoon, which I have to chair. It was a big project. When we come back from that meeting, I would be rather tired. Because it's such a big project. Then between 4 and 5, I would just wait for the day to pass and then go home. Tomorrow morning, Friday, I would start with the minutes, but a Friday would end at 2. That was the standard agreement. We didn't take long lunch ever to make that up. And more often than not, I wouldn't finish the minutes on that Friday because you do other work as well, and you start actioning on yesterday's meeting and you don't finish it. On Monday, I had to prepare for a bigger site meeting that was held on Tuesdays. Again, I chair the meeting, so I need to prep the agenda, make sure everything was done from the previous week's minutes. So by Wednesday, the minutes haven't been done, but we have another site meeting on Thursday. Then I quickly get the minutes out by Wednesday, one day before the next meeting, the Thursday. And honestly, if you do minutes like that, stop it. It's terrible. So what I proposed to my boss was, on that Thursday after the meeting, let me go home. I'll rest, I'll go to the shops, do whatever I need to do, and then on a Thursday evening, I will sit and do the minutes. When everyone gets to the office Friday morning at 8, the actions they need to action on will be in their inboxes. The minutes will be in their inboxes. But if I go and have breakfast with my sister and only come in at 10, I don't want to hear anything about it. And you can hear that this is to the benefit of the company, that those flexi hours had to be implemented. I'm too tired at 4 to immediately start with the minutes. But for each and every one of you, there's this story where it would be to the benefit of the company if you can work flexi hours. Let's go back to get the feedback from your employees. How does it benefit the company? And then discuss the limitations and the extremities. It is important to have limitations here. There are people who cannot work like this at all. I would say I wouldn't want to work with them. because I want to believe that everyone's grown up and can be trusted. But if, those people, you have to work with them in the old way. But I'm pretty sure most people can actually work on flexi time. Then the third suggestion is permanently benefit from out-of-office work. Identify one project and one individual that you can do the experiment with, where you will keep that person out of the office most of the time. The important thing, but I'm sure we've all had to learn that now, is the security issues with regards to the technology. Just keep your hand on it, make sure you are comfortable with all of that. I'm not going into great detail about that. If you have employees that doesn't work in your office, it obviously reduces your overhead by a lot. You avoid office politics, you pay per deliverable, and you don't waste your own time checking up on employees that come in late or hang around the coffee pot too long. Stop spending your time on that. It is so stupid. Spend your time on things you're good at. Again, get feedback. Were you more or less productive from home? As I've said earlier, it's real hard work to make it a success working from home or remotely. How does it benefit the company? These things you have to write down. You have to say it to each other. Don't just leave it be. Everyone needs to feel that this is the best solution for the company. Discuss the limitations and the extremities of this type of work, and then consider the security implications. One other tip I can give you is to outsource a task. Give a freelance architect a task to complete, not an entire project, just a task. Someone you haven't worked with before. So what is difficult here is, because we work in an office environment, it's not really expected of us to give a good quality instruction, because we can change it. We easily catch it that someone isn't doing what we thought they should be doing. We stop them and we change their instruction. But if we teach ourselves to give better instructions, we become far more efficient. So, clearly define what is required. Provide a deadline. It's not an open tap. Negotiate a price and agree a standard of work. You can even do this if we have a lot of time now. You can outsource something, and if it's of a poor quality, just give it to one of your employees that's used to this brief. One doesn't immediately get a team of people who can do work at a standard that you like. It is a system you develop. But I mean, that was the case when you opened your practice at the beginning anyways. More accessible services. The small projects that waste your time and the resources in your office can now be done by someone else. A typical example of a project like that is the emergency escape routes. So you are used to doing hotels for a big corporate group. Now suddenly they expect you to do the emergency escape plans as well. What you're left at is you ask your lead architect who did it to edit the drawings, and it's so expensive to have it done in this way. But if you teach yourself how to brief someone properly, then you can outsource that work, charge your normal rate what you were supposed to charge, and get it back. You pay far less. The outsourced person gets more less than your lead architect would get for the same job, and you get to use your lead architect with what he or she is good at. So there's the summary of the tasks I suggest to you. I encourage you, move back and forth with it. It's very exciting. Obviously, I've burnt my fingers a lot, but all of these are low risk tests. We are actually all forced to test these. I've just spelled it out for you. There is there is so much opportunity to take this a lot further. I'd like to take you through how I've been doing it for the past 4 years, what my teams look like, just to graphically explain it to you. The project facilitator or the lead, that is my job. That is what I do. You can see it's my little manager icon. I liaise with the client, I do the scope, I do all the admin. Then I have designers. These are the people I outsource work to. Many of them work in your offices. They do it after hours. It's agreements I reach with them, and then they produce on a quality that we've agreed. And sometimes I pay draftsmen, which is obviously slightly more cost effective if it doesn't require a lot of design. Or I give the designed file to the draftsman, and then he or she documents that for me. We agree up front what type of documentation I would require, especially before I give it into council. I don't do any drawing work myself. And then building contract coordinator. That's a specialist service I've been offering because I'm good at it. With the site work, projects get sour, there are fights, there were poor contracts in place, and normally then I would get involved and facilitate the process to get the project done amicably before they go into formal dispute resolution. I'm going to take you back to the standard architectural service. We've been through a lot now, understanding what can be done, who should be doing what, in what space, where the opportunities are in working remotely. We've been through a lot of these details. What I've done with this slide is I've split it into small niche services that can be offered by architects. I myself do Inception as a document. When I go see clients, I compile an Inception document. It's a 9-page document. I'll gladly share it with anyone who wants it. Please send me an email to anneke@schrik.co.za. I've forwarded it to many people who've heard me speak about this online or at CPD presentations. Just pop me a mail, I'll send it to you. Change it as you see fit. It's a document I compiled as a pre-contract agreement. Obviously, I sign either PROXA or client-architect agreement with a client, but this document I sent to them after our first meeting, where everything that needs to be discussed at inception and everything that is expected of us in SACAP's Code of Conduct are headings in this document, which you can then just complete and send to the client. I don't think I've ever done a project where it never happens that I have to send that document back to the client, showing them, no, this is what you said at the first meeting. Then we take it from there. So this thing has saved me numerous times. Advice before buying a property. That is what Ian Alexander refers to as stage 0. Many times clients rock up with an ad they bought, which was the worst ad they could have possibly bought. But we can offer it as a service to guide them when buying property. For commercial developments, this is an entire portfolio. Pre-development advice and feasibilities. There are many of you that have a lot of experience in this. I really, truly hope you have sensible ways of charging for this and are not giving your life for free. Stage 2, concept design proposals. Many architects love doing this. I think there's a lot of opportunity to offer this as an isolated service. Sketch plans, marketing material. Oh my goodness. How many hours have we spent doing free marketing material for clients? But if it becomes our narrative that these are isolated services, we can charge for it accordingly, easily. Design development. There are not very few architects. But it often happens that architects don't get this part right. The design development, the interrogation of the design falls on the floor. But if you sell yourself to everyone out there as someone who is meticulous and immaculate with design development, then one can easily get you in to advise on that specific part of a project. Value engineering, it's the same as design development. Some people are incredible with value engineering, and some people don't even know what it is. Why do we pay the same for it, or ask the same for it? Interior details, I outsource that work. Detail specification, that's something I isolate as a service. Ask someone to do it for me and then provide it to the client. Technical documentation, that's done by my draftsman. Construction detail drawings, again, something done by a draftsman, someone I never see. I'm situated in Pretoria. I have a draftsman in Cape Town. I think after she worked for me for about, more than a year, I once said to her, let's just meet up. Let's just meet. And I've met her and she's been working for me ever since. Building contract coordination. That's what I do. More often than not, architects only provide a service up to 4.2. The architects then phone me and ask, will I do stage 5 and 6, which I love. I'm very happy to do it. Actually, I like getting involved in 4.2 with the procurement as well. It's just a more streamlined process. Quick construction advice. Again, charge per hour for it, and don't feel sorry for it. I'm better at building than your average housewife. If she needs my advice, I'll gladly provide it, but I'm going to charge for it. And then site meeting management, similar to building contract coordination. Inspections. I've been involved in projects where by the time it comes to closeout, the relationships have deteriorated. And now a fair eye needs to assess what the situation is and try to finish the project. There's a big gap in the market just so you know, if anyone else wants to do that, there's a lot of work like that. As-built submissions, we've all been confronted with that. That's an easy service to provide. Again, I outsource that work. Check all the drawings, very meticulous with the checking of the drawings, and commenting and asking the draftsman to redo it until it's perfectly correct. Completing the documentation I do myself, but I haven't been to council in, 6 years. A runner does council work. Operations management post-occupation. This is 6+. We get involved in these type of issues on buildings so often. And if you are good at it, sell yourself as someone who is good at exactly that. So in closing, what I'm encouraging you to do is ask yourself, what is my ideal situation? Let's start with, what am I good at? We said, are you a maker or a manager? Maybe you are incredibly good with lighting specifications, which coincidentally I suck at. I have to get those reps out and just believe what it is they say every time. Or work with an electrical engineer who really does not have the ability to find pretty lights that meet the requirements of the client. But what are the things that you are better than your peers with doing? Write it down. Make a list of it. Write down 10 things. I'm sure you're better than your friends with 10 things. What part of my work do I like the most? For me, I really don't like designing. It could be because I'm not good at it, or as good as other people are at it. I don't like going to council. I stopped going to council just because I hate it. It's not because I've never been or I don't know how the system works. I've spent many hours of my life at council. But that's not what I like doing. One other thing is I don't like driving around. I only have limited time to work, and therefore I don't accept projects that are further away than X amount of kilometers from my house, where I work from, because I want to spend my time working, not driving to somewhere where I can work. What part of the work should I avoid doing because I suck at it or I hate it? Then question number 3, do I want to work with other people? So at our house, both my husband and I work from home permanently. He cannot stand working with other people. He hates the small talk. He cannot outsource work. He is bad at everything about working in a team. Whereas for me, I love working in a team. But luckily, the type of clients I see, I have to see them a lot. I work in teams for the client. I have one big client which I serve, and there I have to work in teams a lot. And if I want to involve people into my projects, I involve them as I see fit. I accomplish more in a team because I'm good at outsourcing. But what is relevant for you? You can decide now. You're working from home now. Number 4, what service can I offer as an isolated service? The examples I made in the previous slide, I literally thought of one Sunday afternoon while visiting my parents-in-law. You can think of a vast list of niche products you can offer. But it's important to tell people around you that you can do it and that you're good at it. Consider joining a platform like Fiverr. I'm very sure they are completely full now and inundated with people like ourselves who offer services. But go to fiverr.com. Just check it out. Just realize that it exists, that other people can get these services on Fiverr, that you can make an entire living from working on a platform like Fiverr. Then question 5, what does my ideal day look like? Like Paul Graham, would you prefer working between 9 and 3 and then again from 12 to 1? For him, that created 2 days. Is your ideal day you would want the time to take your kids to school, have coffee with your wife, and only start working then? You really don't mind not having lunch, but you want to hit the gym before 4. You'll work an hour later tonight. Whatever that looks like. The only thing I'm very sure of is that not all of us has the ideal day in mind, sitting in traffic to reach the office at 8 and sitting in traffic because we could leave the office by 5 and have a 1-hour lunch break chatting to people you didn't decide should be in your life about whatever they want to chat about. That's not the ideal day. Well, that's not my ideal day. Am I a loser or a go-getter in this time of lockdown? The call is yours. You can hide behind no one in this time. It is an incredible test for all of us, but it's a great opportunity, and I am very excited to see who will rise from this and what can come after this. I hope this inspires you to be a better architect. I hope we can work towards a better environment for all of us. And I hope this can change your life. The common purpose for events within the CPD framework of SACAP is continuing practice development, CPD, activities to stimulate, equip, and empower and enable practitioners to continuously develop their knowledge, understanding, insight, and skills for the building of expertise in the practice towards excellence in architecture. This is the comment on the top of the document when one submits a CPD for accreditation. I truly hope that this presentation has done what CPD expects of us. I really hope that you are inspired by this. In this time, we have to be entrepreneurial. We have to find ways to stimulate the economy. We are the privileged few. We have to take responsibility of our situation, use this opportunity to find your niche and learn how to sell it and share it. So we as architects or an architectural community can rise up stronger than before. Please contact me if you have any comments or if you need additional help. You're very welcome to send me an email at anneke@schlick.co.za. Thank you very much. The common purpose for events within the CPD framework of SACAP is continuing practice development, CPD, activities to stimulate, equip and empower and enable practitioners to continuously develop their knowledge, understanding, insight and skills for the building of expertise in the practice towards excellence in architecture. This is the comment on the top of the document when one submits a CPD for accreditation. I truly hope that this presentation has done what CPD expects of us. I really hope that you are inspired by this. In this time, we have to be entrepreneurial. We have to find ways to stimulate the economy. We are the privileged few. We have to take responsibility of our situation, use this opportunity to find your niche and learn how to sell it and share it. So we as architects or an architectural community can rise up stronger than before. Please contact me if you have any comments or if you need additional help. You're very welcome to send me an email at anneke@schlick.co.za. Thank you very much.